Your LinkedIn and Instagram personas are different. So, what is the strategy behind having two different personas?
That was not again like something that I created a strategy for. And I say that a lot for somebody who's worked in strategy and still continues to work in strategy, because I always felt like my profiles were the experimentation ground for what I tell my clients. I always try to experiment on my profiles first rather than and testing out different theories before I told my clients to go down a certain route. But that being said, I think this approach was a little more like there was a little more method to the madness here, because I felt like I experimented everything on both of those platforms. So on Instagram, I tried putting out content around freelancing, and I tried to be, like I worked with consulting firm and I tried to speak about that. But the numbers just didn't align with what I would want it to be. But on LinkedIn, it was the exact opposite. Every time I talked about freelancing, consulting, or like me shifting from consulting to freelancing, how did I do that? What were the mistakes I made? I always got like above average views in terms of how the audience was perceiving it to be. Just from that, just from a very data driven perspective, I thought that if I talk about core finance, it just performs better on Instagram. For me personally, like the audience really appreciates me talking about credit card hacks and insurance and income tax and stuff like that. But when I take that put that on LinkedIn, it doesn't perform that well. Like it gives me average views. But the minute I switch my stance to, freelancing and consulting, I've had that background also, people just respond in a much more positive way. That's the reason why I have a different persona on both of these platforms. It was not something that I decided very early on. I experimented on both of these platforms, and what worked, I just doubled down on.
Let's just talk about your Instagram persona and the objective there. Your followers, do you think they follow you because of the quality of the content, how interesting you make it, the fun aspect of it? Or is it the knowledge behind it that actually attracts them?
On a platform like Instagram, it's not just, we try to sort of narrow it down to, we just talk about finance. But in all honesty, we're trying to grab attention from every niche there is, right? There are people making literally comedy skits and people making dance videos, which are just a lot more entertaining to watch than, say, like a finance reel. So we're competing with them and not just competing within the niche of like educational content. If you think from that perspective, it's very important to bring a certain element of like entertainment or like something that surprises them or leaves them with, I would want to come back and watch this again. Because if I just sit down, talk to my camera and say, income tax section 80D says whatever, nobody's going to come back to my profile or watch and even remember that, this person ever existed. Because we can go on Instagram and scroll through reels for hours and not even remember the username of the people who put that content out, right? Because that's how the entire app is designed. The UX UI is such that we don't really have to care about who's putting out that content as long as we are looking at content and scrolling through it. So just to stand out and just to create a very unique brand proposition for yourself, I think that's when I realized that it's very important for me to sort of play characters who are very different from who I am in real life, very honestly. Like they might be an extension of me in some cases. They might be inspired from like parts of me, might be inspired from parts of others that I've grown up with. And I've seen these people around me. It's just that. So one character that I really play is a South Delhi boy who's like really spoiled, really bratty, doesn't really know a lot, crashes his dad's cars left, right, and center. And he talks all about car insurance. So he's a character who's a permanent returning character whenever I'm talking about car insurance in specific. Then there's a South Delhi auntie that I play who's always there when, her kids are coming back to her telling her, this is how you save taxes. And she's, but I don't have to, like, I don't need to. So that's again a returning character. And people love her. Like, I remember I get like very frequently this happens and I get DMs saying that, when is that auntie going to come back? And I'm like, oh wow, people do remember and people are like specifically asking for her. Number one, it creates like people resonate with these characters because if they seen these people around them somewhere, probably in a public transportation or like in their friend circle. So people resonate with these characters. And sometimes they just tag their friends saying, this is so you. That just brings a smile to my face. And because people resonate with that character in such a fun way and it's not very overwhelming at all, which is why when I'm delivering something that this character is saying, people are able to understand it a lot better. If I created a persona which was like, this person just knows a lot more than I do, so I can probably never do what she's doing, people would never really be able to understand that personal finance is actually not very complicated and not as overwhelming as people on the television make it seem. It's actually very, very achievable, which is why my characters somehow imbibe those qualities that they're very achievable people. These are the people you know. and they also make mistakes on the regular. But if they can learn about it, so can you. That's the kind of approach that I have to creating skits, to creating characters. And also sometimes my characters are inspired from like their television series or favorite movies. So today it's 2nd of November, it's Shah Rukh Khan's birthday, and he also just happens to be like my favorite actor of all times. So I've created a lot of reels inspired from like his scenes in movies, which people just resonate with. For example, his scene in Chak De India where he says that, oh, I am the coach of the team and stuff like that. So I created a very similar reel saying that, oh, I am an index fund, and there are individuals talking about their industries. And that's not required. So that's the parallel that I drew there. People really appreciated that reel. Sometimes it's inspired from people, from things I see around me, or or some other characters that I see probably on the internet, and I try to like take certain characteristics from them. Or sometimes it's just purely based out of TV series like Schitt's Creek or The Office, for example. Or just like a popular pop culture movie or reference, and just try to recreate that in a finance aspect so that people can understand. That becomes like a familiarity touch point, and then you introduce a topic which you're not familiar with, so it kind of